"We're done dealing with your backwater factory," our client company's president remarked sarcastically. I turned down their company because they had put out some ridiculous terms for our deal. However, I didn't think they would gently back down because of their character. Given the future of our plant and business, we would need to adequately handle this issue. After gathering the required data a few days later, we made the decision to take revenge on Mr. Smith. We would let him know that we were now working with a different competitor rather than his. "I had no idea your factory's parts were top sellers in the industry, and you even have patents," Mr. Smith said, going pale. He later ran away and tried to make another offer, but we ignored him as he wandered around our warehouse. We confronted him with the situation's reality. "I'm Sam Brown, an ordinary man in his 40s. One of my drawbacks is that I have trouble interpreting the nuanced emotions of others. But my strengths are that I'm healthy and have never been ill. Luckily, I never ran out of places to play because there were fields, rivers, and mountains close by. That's what makes the countryside so beautiful. I used to run through fields and woods all day long as a kid. I was reared mostly in the country, although I spent a few years in the city for college, where I lived in a dorm. I have always enjoyed making crafts out of abandoned candy boxes and fallen branches. I used to make different things and boast to my parents and friends about them. It started as a simple curiosity, but as my parents and friends complimented my sculptures, I began to enjoy it and it became a hobby. As a result, art consistently received higher grades than any other subject in school. As I've gotten older, it hasn't changed. Even although I deal with metals and plastics now, I still get really excited about coming up with new ideas. Failures are the beginning of everything. But it's fun to get better via experience and trial and error. I enjoy watching an untidy object be transformed into a skillfully made finished thing. As a result of these experiences, I now work at a manufacturing. I oversee the crew on the floor in my role as a supervisor. Even if I occasionally question whether I'm doing well, I must be managing because I frequently hear that providing targeted support where it's required is incredibly helpful. Our primary product at the factory is medical device parts. We have the best quality in the business. Although they are still gaining popularity, we also produce parts for stylish interior furnishings. Even although the work is challenging, I like it every day since it is what I want to do. I think my real calling is making things. I was checking every factory work procedure with documentation in hand just before lunch when I was called over by other employees. Apparently, something went wrong. In one section of the facility, a gathering of workers, primarily recent hires, had assembled. They are all comparatively youthful workers. Using a towel slung over his shoulder in the filthy heat, one of the workers wiped away his perspiration and said, "Sorry to bother you during such a busy time, Mr. Brown, but please take a look at this." A male employee gestures towards it. A sizable press machine was present. Parts are subjected to pressure using the press machine. Our manufacturing activities depend on it, but it doesn't seem to be functioning. It isn't even moving. Exactly. Can we take any action regarding it? I've worked at this factory long enough to understand how to fix and maintain the equipment we use. Therefore, the younger employees typically call me over when there is a machine problem. It only occurred a short while ago. After making an odd sound, it ceased functioning. While listening to the male worker, I inspect the inside of the machine. Looking inside, I see several worn parts lined up. There's no surprise, given the machine has been operating for decades. After a thorough check of each part, I look up. There's a bit of wear and tear, but it should be manageable. Just wait here. I'd like you to help the other workers in the meantime. Understood. Seeing a likely resolution, the responsible employee and others visibly relax and move on. As I watch them go, I take a moment to breathe. A young female worker approaches me. Despite progress in gender equality, there are still few women in manufacturing, so her distinctive presence in the factory made it easy to remember her face and name. Her name is Mary Williams. She is a sincere and earnest woman who dislikes dishonesty. Recently, we've had more new deals, haven't we? It's been getting busier, so maybe the machines are tired too. Maybe so. These machines have been working for decades. I'd like to replace them with new ones and give them a rest soon. Hearing my hesitant words, Miss Williams quietly asked, "Is our financial situation still not good?" "No, that's not the case. Compared to 2 or 3 years ago, we've got a lot more leeway now. In fact, this factory was nearly shut down a few years ago. We were almost out of money to buy materials, and we could count our clients on one hand. However, we overcame those challenges by actively incorporating the ideas of the young staff, looking into new sectors, and putting more effort into sales. Pretty soon, we should be able to make deals with a few more companies. Just hang in there until then." "Is that so?" "That's reassuring. It means we'll be busier. I'll have to work hard." As the conversation with Miss Williams finished, I went to call back the male employee who had left earlier. After the repairs were completed, I should return to my own work that was interrupted. But I need to address another issue that has arisen. If we had a larger workforce at the factory, I could focus more on my own tasks. But given the current situation, it can't be helped. To be able to concentrate on my work, I need to handle the increasing workload efficiently. However, before that, we had a visitor. The person who came to the factory was a client. His name is Mr. Kenny Smith. He is a man from a generation above me, and he works for a well-known medical equipment manufacturing company. In this industry, there's hardly anyone who doesn't know his company. I wonder why Mr. Smith has come to our company today, though. There is a business deal between his company and the one I work for, and the terms should already be settled. Could there have been some flaw in the contract? When I showed Mr. Smith to the reception room, he heavily sat down on the sofa. "Small rural factories have it tough, having to do everything by yourself," he said. "Yes, that's true, but everyone I work with here is great, so it's not too bad." Just as Mr. Smith said, the employees at this factory do various tasks on their own. With our limited staff, focusing on just one task means we can manage if someone takes a sick day or when problems arise. That's why I'm handling Mr. Smith's visit today, replacing the usual person who's out with food poisoning. "I don't want to waste time, so let me get straight to the point," he said. "I need the parts we ordered delivered sooner." Surprised by his unexpected request, I quickly reviewed our schedule in my mind. Mr. Smith wants delivery several weeks earlier than planned, but it's just not possible. The parts we supply are for precision machinery. There is no room for even 0.1 millimeters of error in our products. Rushing production could lead to a high chance of defects. We can't do that. These parts are used in medical devices, right? You would also have issues with substandard products. I explained. I understand that. I'm not saying to make them carelessly. Just hire more people or extend working hours to get it done. That's unreasonable. Our factory is already quite busy. We had issues this morning, and because of that, we're even busier and overtime has increased. Increasing working hours further under these circumstances, our employees might collapse from overwork, I replied. I couldn't agree with Mr. Smith's words. Our large company is reaching out to a small place like yours. I appreciate that, but there are plenty of other partners out there. If you want to make money, you should be willing to stretch a bit, he insisted. Mr. Smith's smirk grew as he said, "Given the situation, our CEO would likely make the same decision." He then made a call right in front of me. The voice of someone who sounded like the CEO came through loud on the phone, saying, "It's a pity to blow such a valuable deal. We're ending our contract with your rural factory," he announced. Still, I couldn't agree to their terms. "I'll come back in a few days. Think it over well." By then, dealing with Mr. Smith's company brings significant profit if I nodded yes. Our factory could make more money. However, if such recklessness caused irreparable harm to our employees, I would regret it, especially now as many young workers in this company are still learning their jobs. I didn't want to subject them to grueling work at this time. Despite Mr. Smith trying various tactics to push up the delivery date, I declined all his requests. What an impossible person, I thought. Next time, have someone more understanding handle this. With those words, Mr. Smith, his face red with anger, stormed out of the reception room. It seems the employees witnessed his exit with a look of, "Not him again." They speculated he must have made some unreasonable demands again. Mr. Smith was notoriously difficult, known for his overbearing attitude towards other employees. When I returned to the factory, I received sympathetic looks from other workers, but the rumors were accurate, so I didn't correct them. Catching up on the morning's delays was more critical than thinking about Mr. Smith. Yet the impact of Mr. Smith's visit showed up in unexpected ways. That afternoon, after finishing work, as I changed out of my work clothes and prepared to leave, I could hear the cicadas singing from the trees nearby. It was just after sunset, and the area was growing darker. A stray cat that lives behind the factory came up right by my feet. Feeding stray animals indiscriminately isn't really a good practice, but this cat sometimes appears hungry, so I occasionally end up giving it small fish or similar food. As I watched the cat eagerly devour the food, Miss Williams approached. Usually she leaves work early, but it seemed she delayed her departure today. "Good evening, Mr. Brown," she said. "Miss Williams, you haven't left yet?" I asked. "Yes, there's something I wanted to discuss with you. It's nothing serious, so just listening will do." Despite her words, her expression was quite somber. She squatted down, stroking the belly of the cat lying on the ground, and continued talking. "My father passed away early, so it's been just my mother and me all this time." She spoke about her family circumstances. "But lately, I've been arguing a lot with her. She keeps pestering me to stop working at the factory and get married. She says factory work doesn't pay well and it's no job for a woman." Miss Williams gave a troubled smile, and I found myself at a loss for words. It was her family's matter. As an outsider who knows nothing, it's not my place to comment. The pay here isn't that different from other jobs, and the benefits are good too, but she won't listen. Miss Williams said with a sad face, waving goodbye to the stray cat as it walked away, "I really want to keep working here. I don't want it to end." She continued a bit shyly, "Because I never had people around who liked making things, and here there are many people who share the same hobby, so it feels like home." Miss Williams, I hadn't realized she felt that way about her work. Could Mr. Smith have said something awful to the employees today? She usually doesn't show her vulnerabilities. I remember the rumors whispered around the factory after Mr. Smith's visit this morning. Some mentioned Mr. Smith was so mad he said he'd crush our company, and others joked, "He's just one person. He couldn't possibly do that." Causing anxiety among the employees is a failure on my part as a supervisor. I need to figure out how to handle this. A few days later, since the company I work for is small, I pretty much know all the employees in design, sales, and other departments by face. As I was walking toward the president's office in another building on the premises, I was approached by a male employee. He is Mr. White from the sales department, the one who was recently out with food poisoning. With an apologetic expression, he apologized. "Mr. Brown, I'm sorry for the trouble I caused the other day." "Don't worry about it. We've known each other for years, right? We help each other out when in trouble. Thank you. I really appreciated your help, Mr. White." Having expressed his gratitude, he then brought up a topic of interest. It was about the factory's products. "By the way, it seems that the product we discussed last time has been patented." "Really? I was just about to check on that. Thanks for letting me know." He informed me about a part our factory manufactures. It's a part with a uniquely crafted shape and special processing to enhance durability. There had been discussions about potentially patenting it. We had submitted the application to the appropriate office, and it appears the patent has been granted. Anyway, do you need anything from the sales department? We're short on people, so I'll be making the coffee. No, I'll pass on your coffee this time. It's always had a unique taste. I joked as I walked past the room, heading towards the president's office. "The president's office." I see Mr. White replied, seemingly understanding my intentions from our brief conversation. Given our long history, he probably knows me well enough to guess what I'm up to. Like that time last summer when Mr. Smith tried to kick the cat. "You had that same look," he recalled. He was referring to an incident involving the stray cat that lives around the factory. The cat had unwittingly approached Mr. Smith when he was in a bad mood and almost had a terrible fate. It was fortunate I noticed just in time and distracted him. And afterwards, it was quite the masterpiece. He chuckled. secretly smearing sap on Mr. Smith's clothes and attracting beetles. Indeed, after Mr. Smith had complained about the heat and taken off his jacket, I had discreetly applied some tree sap near an open window where beetles might gather. When he returned to retrieve his jacket after finishing his business, beetles had swarmed, and he screamed in shock. It was quite satisfying at the time. I would have enjoyed reminiscing longer, but I had important business to attend to, so I bid Mr. White goodbye and left. After parting ways with Mr. White, I finally reached my initial destination, the president's office. The president was working on paperwork in his office when he looked up. "Hey, Brown, what brings you here?" "I have something to discuss. Sorry for the interruption." "No problem at all. After all, you're practically the one who saved this company from going under." As the president put away his documents, he suggested taking a break and sat down on the sofa inside the room. Following his lead, I sat opposite him. "The young talent you brought in has kept us going by incorporating current trends. If it weren't for your idea to have our medical device factory produce products for the interior furniture market, who knows where we'd be now? You're thinking too much. They were just having a tough time finding jobs, and I simply offered them a chance. Well, let's address that after we tackle the issue at hand." Seeing the president's serious face, I took a deep breath to organize my thoughts, then explained the events of the day and made a proposal. Hearing this, the president muttered, "I see," and looked me straight in the eye. "It might slow down production for a while, but considering the future of the company, it's necessary. I don't want to exhaust our valuable employees because of someone like Smith." With a smile, the president said, "I approve of your proposal. Go ahead and do it." It was clear he trusted me to honor the trust placed in me. I must ensure I do not fail. A few days later, Mr. Smith visited the company again. This time, unlike his previous visit, he announced he wanted to speak with the president. Despite being told by the employees present that the president was too busy to meet, Mr. Smith insisted and made his way to the president's office. It's clear he lacks a sense of propriety in various ways, I thought. Hearing from those who dealt with him that Mr. Smith had arrived, I paused my work and hurried to the president's office. "Mr. Smith is here, isn't he?" Miss Williams, sensing something was amiss, spoke to me. "Good luck." "Yes, of course," I replied. She and the other employees at the factory had also been working hard in various capacities these past few days. Other employees encouraged me with shouts of "Stay strong," and "We're supporting you." In the end, I must do well to repay them. On the way, I met up with Mr. White in the sales department, and we made our way to the president's office together. It seemed the conversation had just reached a pause when we arrived. The president and Mr. Smith were sitting opposite each other on the sofas. Upon seeing us, the president addressed Mr. Smith. "So that means the contract is terminated?" Mr. Smith stood up abruptly, exclaiming, "Are you serious?" With anger in his voice, he quickly continued, "Do you understand what losing this deal means?" I said I'd continue to support a rural factory like yours with some adjustments to the terms. That's when I intervened. "He's the one not understanding here. We don't want to overburden our employees, and I believe we've mentioned multiple times that we cannot continue under the terms you proposed. Why are you here?" "This is the president's office," Mr. Smith exclaimed, surprised. Then I replied, slightly exasperated, "As you said, I work in a small rural factory. Even employees can freely enter the president's office here. Of course, that's not always the case. It depends on the situation, but there's no need to explain that much." As Mr. Smith stood there, red-faced and trembling with anger, Mr. White, who had come with me, presented a piece of paper. "What's this?" I asked. Our collaboration with the sales department paid off after several days of hard work. Although it impacted our work efficiency slightly, it was necessary considering the future. Over these days, we had been gathering information from various factory contacts, acquaintances, and business partners. The information was about a rival company to Mr. Smith's employer, who wanted to engage in trade under unreasonable conditions. We found out that a certain rival company was in need of medical device components. We proposed doing business with them instead of Mr. Smith's company. The result was fruitful, and a contract was established. Of course, unlike the dealings with Mr. Smith's company, this was a more ethical contract. I was surprised when the other company expressed not only a willingness to cooperate, but also an eagerness to add insult to injury. Therefore, even though it's usually imprudent, I was able to confront Mr. Smith with the contract in hand. A sticky note was attached to that important contract. On the note, the person who drafted the contract had written, "Too bad for you, rivals." Mr. Smith, incredulous, shouted, "This is a fake," as he kicked the sofa and stormed out of the president's office. There was still the final blow that our parts had been patented, but I'll save that for another time. This looks like we've managed to resolve this issue. Well done, everyone. Good work. We exchanged words of appreciation with each other before leaving the room after the conference. Later, Mr. Smith returned to the company, visibly upset, but we did not engage with him. It seems they had not done their homework well and were working haphazardly. Apparently, Mr. Smith and his team were unaware of essential facts that should have been obvious. "I had no idea your factory's parts are top sellers in the industry and that they were patented. How are we supposed to get the same parts now?" he complained. Furthermore, Mr. Smith tried to backtrack on his actions by pleading with us, bowing his head. "Please, let's renegotiate the contract. Forget everything I've done so far." As we were tired of his self-centered remarks without any apology, we ignored him. It seemed he even considered possibly taking something from the warehouse, but an employee found him loitering in front. The employee said, when I told him that all stock had been delivered to the rival company, he finally gave up and left. Later on, I learned from other business contacts that Mr. Smith had been severely reprimanded by the president and removed from sales duties soon after due to the spread of this incident. The president resigned following a shareholder meeting resolution, seemingly having lost his position for trying to pin all the blame on Mr. Smith. Rumor has it that both are now working in a small company in the countryside. It seems that for them, it turned out to be quite an ironic ending. Unlike Mr. Smith, everything has been going smoothly for us. Our company has grown, and the factory equipment has been upgraded to the latest technology. Due to increased hiring, I no longer need to handle other people's jobs. Having been promoted to factory manager, I am now able to dedicate myself fully to my own responsibilities. It appears Miss Williams has also resolved her issues with her mother. I heard how the company's employees united to overcome a challenge and changed her mother's mind. She now supports her daughter in pursuing what she loves. Recently, I ran into her on our way to work and asked, "How have things been lately?" She replied with a smile, "I'm really enjoying every day." Miss Williams carefully said, "I'm really glad I got a job at this company," as she picked up a cat with a collar. This cat is the same stray that had lived around the factory. With the company's management now more relaxed and the factory's equipment improved, we decided to take care of it. The cat, loitering near the entrance, seemed to be begging for attention from Miss Williams. Seeing this, other employees gathered around, filling the place with smiles. Watching them, I hoped that this place would continue to be a workplace where employees happily work.